Okay, so I'm going to go over all the problems on the worksheet for calculating average rate of change. I'm going to start with number 2 since I've already done number 1. At 3 o'clock, Sharon passes mile marker 295 on Highway 35. At 6 o'clock, she passes mile marker 475. So here I can see my 2 points are 3 and 295 and 6 and 475. Now notice here I have the time as my independent and my miles as my dependent. If I do this as a slope or rate of change, I will get, I could do 475 minus 295, and it's okay if you switch these around, it'll work out. 6 minus 3, but it has to make sure they match up by points. And when you do this, you should get 180 over 3. Now keep in mind, this is miles and this is time, but we can think of that as hours. So that when I divide this, I ended up with 60 miles, and we can say 1 hour. And when you divide this 180 by 3. So in a sentence format, that means I've gone, that Sharon is traveling at an average rate of 60 miles per or each hour. So again, the important thing there is to make sure you understand what they're talking about. What does the answer mean? Alright, so let's look at the next one. The value of my new car after 2 years, this is number 3, was $11,200. When the car was 6 years old, the value had dropped to $6,100. So I can say here 2, 11,200, and then 6, 6,100. Okay, so you got to be careful on this one. Let's say I decide to do it like this. The rate of change here is, let's say you do it like this. You go 11,200 minus 6,100. And then you have 6 minus 2. Actually, look at that. I'm switching these. But these need to make sure they're staying the same. So the 2 should be under the 11,200. So you got to make sure they line up. So you subtract these and you got 5,100 over negative 4. Well, that doesn't make sense because that negative 4 represents years. You don't gain $5,100 over negative 4 years. You don't travel back in time. So you can flip-flop it and say negative 5,100 over 4. So that way you know $5,100 is lost over the 4 years in value. Now divide that, and when you do, you should get 1,250. I'm sorry, 1,275. So I got negative $1,275 over 1 year. Now what does that mean? That means that the car loses an average. Notice this is an average because it could be different from year to year, but this is an average of $1,275. Now the lose covers the negative. Keep that in mind. $1,275 each year. Okay, so there's that one. Okay, so the next one, number 4, we're looking at a lab technician is growing a bacteria sample. After 1 hour, she notes that there are 250 bacteria. And after 3 hours, she notes there are 1,000 bacteria. So now we know that this is growing like that. So she could do something like this to figure out the average rate of change, 1,000 minus 250, 3 minus 1, which is going to be 750 over 2, which would be 375. Again, this is over 1, and you need to understand that's 375 bacteria for each hour. So what this is telling me is that the bacteria grew, or the bacteria sample grew at an average of 375 each hour. Now this is important to note that we're putting here average because, again, this is something that it could be more than that. I mean, or it could be a little bit more, a little bit less per hour. So we're saying this is an average rate. This is still a rate of change, but it's an average rate, which allows us to express it as a linear function. Number 5, Mr. Suarez joined a gym to lose weight. After 3 weeks of membership, okay, so after 3 weeks of membership, he weighed 189 pounds. And after 12 weeks of membership, he weighed 162. Way to go, Mr. Suarez. All right, so if I look at this, I could say 162 minus 189, 12 minus 3. Now notice here that this one is like on top of each other like that. Okay, that's very important. Okay, so here I notice here this is negative 27 over 9. And when I divide that, I get negative 3 over 1. Now remember, this is pounds and this is weeks. So what that tells me is that Mr. Suarez lost, that's your negative, that covers the negative, lost an average of 3 pounds each week. Okay, so that should hopefully kind of guide you along on that. Okay, let's look at number 6. Number 6, on his 5th birthday, Paul was 42 inches tall. So 5, 42. On his 7th birthday, he was 48 inches tall. Paul's growing. Yay, he's such a big boy. Anyways, I'm just kidding. All right, so we've got here 48 minus 42. Notice again, the y's are going on top. 7 minus 5. That would give me 6 over 2, which is 3 inches. And again, you've got to remember, this is years. So 1 year. So what that tells me is Paul is growing. Such a big boy. Anyways, Paul is growing at an average rate of 3 inches each year. Okay, number 7. In 1984, price of a VCR was $375. In 1996, the price was $125. Okay, so again, make sure you set this one up carefully. The minus, I'm going to put the 125 minus 375. And then I'm going to have 1996 minus 1984. So notice here I've got like this one matching up over each other. So that gives me 250, negative 250 over 12. Okay, when you divide this one, it's not going to give you, say, a nice answer. Negative 250 divided by 12 gives me an answer of like negative 125 over 6. So you have to go on your calculator and go to menu, convert it to a decimal. So when we convert this to a decimal, we get negative 20.83. And again, make sure that's over 1. And what that means is that VCRs, I guess the price, I should put it like this. The price, because this is talking about the price of a VCR decreased, because that's what the negative means, it went down, decreased by an average rate of $20.83 each year. Okay, so there you go with that one. Okay, I'm going to skip number 8 because I'm going to talk about number 8 in class because it actually involves there's several different ways you could have looked at that one. So let's look at the next one. Darryl works in the clothing department of a large store. When her shift began at 4 p.m., the register showed sales of $10,550. So here's number 9. At 4 o'clock, her sales were $10,550, or the register had showed that. At 9 p.m., when she left, the sales were $40,620. So Darryl was just being a busy little beaver selling a lot of clothes. All right, so when I saw this, let's see what the sales were for her. I'm going to say $40,620 minus 10,550 over 9 minus 4. Okay, so I know she worked 5 hours. And then I'm saying 40,620 minus 10,550, and I get 30,070. Okay, so when I divide that by 5, I get 6,014, we'll say over 1. Okay, so this is dollars, and this is hours. So that means that here, Dara sold or processed, whatever, an average, or the store sold this much, an average of $6,014 each hour. Okay, number 10. And again, if these are going too fast, you know, you can always pause and like go backwards a little bit. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, temperature outside registered 85 degrees. So at 1 o'clock, 85 degrees. And at 7 o'clock, it had dropped down to 61 degrees. Cold front. Okay. So here I'm going to say 61 minus 85, 7 minus 1. So 6, let's see, that's 24, negative 24. So now I can see this is going down. It went down 24 degrees in 6 hours. If you simplify that, you would have negative 4 over 1. Remember, that's degrees, that's hours. So that would tell me that the temperature dropped an average of 4 degrees each hour. Okay, number 11. When an amusement park opened, the counter on the turnstile read at the entrance 1,278. So at the beginning, it read this, 1,278. 7 hours later, the counter read 3,672. So that would suggest that what I would do here is say 3,672 minus 1,278 over 7 minus 0 gives me 3,672 minus 1,278, 2,394 over 6. I'm sorry, over 7. So that tells me there was 2,394 people on average at this, going through this turnstile. Oh no, I'm sorry, overall over the 7 hours. When you divide that, you get 342 over 1. Remember, this is people, because that's what goes through the turnstiles. This is hours. So that would tell me that 342 people entered the park. An average, I should say, an average of 342 people entered the park each hour. Now, again, we're saying an average because maybe there was more people that entered at the beginning of the day, and then as we went through the rest of the day, less and less people were entering. But overall, we could see that this was like, this gives us a way of looking at it, say, linearly. So it's just, well, that's why the key word there is average rate. Okay, so look at number 12. The concession stand at an amusement park begins the day with 500 popcorn containers. So we start the day with 500 popcorn containers. At the end of the day, 12 hours later, there are only 44 containers left. So a lot of popcorn sold. Okay, so what we can see here is this. We've got, let's say, 44 minus 500, 12 minus 0. That's 12. 44 minus 500 should be 456 negative. Okay, so when I divide that, negative 456 divided by 12. Now keep in mind, again, this is hours, this is containers. Okay, so I have an answer of negative 38 over 1. Containers, hours. So that tells me that the park sold, and I'm going to say sold because think about it. What you're not going to be giving away this popcorn. So I'm going to say sold an average of 38 containers of popcorn. I'm not going to put here of popcorn, but 38 containers each hour. Now that could also mean you could say it like this. You could say, if you want to make sure you notice this as a negative, that the park lost 38 containers each hour, an average of 38 containers each hour, which is the same thing as hopefully, I guess in this case, hopefully selling, because hopefully we're not losing them like they're being stolen or something. But yeah, there you go. All right, last one I'm going to go over, number 13. Scott began printing his history paper at 3:15. At 3:20, found that he had printed 120 of his 150 pages. Okay, so if he began printing on number 13, this is where you have to be careful. This is another one where you be careful. I like this problem. 0, 0. He just started printing. And then 5 minutes later, or let's do it this way. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit differently. 3:15. So I'm going to put here 15. Okay? Since the hours stay the same, I'm just going to put here 15 for 15 minutes. He starts printing. He has printed no papers right then. At the 20th minute, at 3:20, he's printed 120 pages. That's what it says. I don't care about the 150. 150 is extra. Okay, 120 minus 0, 20 minus 15 gives me 120 over 5. Now this is saying 120 pages over 5 minutes. When you divide that, you have 120 divided by 5, you get 24. So 24 pages over 1 minute. That means his printer, Scott's printer, is printing at an average rate of 24 pages per minute. Okay, and there you go. Okay, 14 and 15 I will discuss later. I do realize this is kind of lengthy, so hopefully you look at all this. Thank you very much.